Welcome back. There are a lot of intermediate and advanced things you can do with PowerShell. In this lecture series, I just want to introduce the basic concepts to lay the foundation for those of you who are new to learning PowerShell. So this is an extension to our previous lesson on arrays and ArrayLists in PowerShell 7. Because I would like to add few more concepts to the previous lesson, I decided to create this one as well. If you haven't watched my previous lesson, please watch the tutorial 7 on Introduction to Arrays and ArrayLists before you watch this one. Now, in our previous lesson, we learned how to create an array. And if you create an array with nothing on it, it would be an empty array. But did you know that you can create an array with specific size? Like for example, if you create an array like this, let's call it my empty array. Well, this array currently contains no elements and the size is pretty much 0. There is nothing in there. But you can actually create an empty array with specific size based on built-in new object functions. So how you do this is basically by denoting that it is an array, and with a specific number of elements, we tell the PowerShell that create that array with that number of elements. For example, if I create an array called, let's call it my array, and let's make it equal to, and I'm going to start off with a square bracket because that's how you create that new object function, or the way that this method works. And because we are using an IDE integrated scripting environment, it automatically put the closing bracket here, and I'm going to type object, and notice the object shows up on this list as a known word or a term within PowerShell. So you can click that one, it will give you system object, but we just need object. And then I'm going to open and close another square bracket. And then afterwards, outside of that, I'm going to put 2 colons. And in here, I'm going to say new, and I'm going to enter 10. What this has created is an array called my array with 10 object length, so it is not an empty array. So this one has like 10 objects. Another example would be if I go $, let's say byte array, and I want to create an array with bytes in it, and I'm gonna again open up with a square bracket. If I start typing byte, there you go, the byte is already in the library, so it knows it's there. And I'm gonna open and close another square bracket. Again, I'm gonna put 2 colons, and I put new, and then let's say I want 100. So this one has 100 bytes. So it's an array that is created with 100 bytes on it. Another example would be, let's say I want to create an array with IP information. So let's say IP-ADDER. If I go equal, so I'm just getting IP addresses. Again, square brackets. If I type IP address, and there is a item called IP address right here. So I just like IP with a capital on it, IP address. And again, I'm going to open up a bracket and close up a bracket, square bracket, and I'll put 2 dots in here, and I can go new, and let's say I want 20 IP addresses, and this will give me like 20 IPs. So compared to this array, all of the other arrays actually have a length already associated. There is a something associated within this array, causing these arrays to not to be empty arrays. So the only empty array in here is the one at the top. And how do we know this? We can actually check that with our count function by doing this. So let's go empty array dot count, press enter, and then I'll go my array dot count, enter, and then we'll go byte array dot count, enter, and then go IP attr dot count. Now if I run this code from top to bottom, it'll list the number of items in each of these. So let's do that. So I'm going to run it. So the first array, as I mentioned, is our traditional, or the array that we first learned in this lecture series. It is an empty array and it has no elements in it. But my next array, the my array, contains 10 elements in it because I specifically explicitly decide that it's going to be 10 elements. Next one I have 100 elements, the next one I have 20 elements. So the count shows that yes, these are not empty arrays, but it contains some elements within it. So these are basically ways that you can specify how many number of elements can be contained within an array even when we have not entered anything into the array itself. Having said that, I just want to point out one thing because you are new to PowerShell. Notice that only specific object types can be used in this method. For example, object, byte, and IP address. Those are already built-in functions. If we try to create something else, let's say I want to create an array. I'm going to call this test array. And if I try to create one, say haha, because haha is not a one that is already in the library. If I put dot dot and I say new, let's say I have 5. That's right. These are just basically comments. You know they are comments because it starts with this specific symbol or character, which is the hash symbol or character. This will not result in a array being found, because reason for that is there is no such thing as haha. So if I run this right now, so I'm going to clear the screen, and if I run the code, it end up sending out an error message saying unable to find haha. The reason for that is these specific arrays are created using built-in objects that are already baked into your PowerShell 7. Those include the object, byte, and IP address, and there are a bunch of other stuff. So if you start creating stuff that doesn't exist, like such as this haha, obviously it's gonna end up with an error message. So that's why you end up with error message, because this specific object doesn't exist. So when you're creating these kind of empty arrays, you need to make sure that you use items that already baked into your PowerShell. Again, as you go through advanced or intermediate level PowerShell scripting, you will realize how useful these built-in objects and functions are. For now, just know that you can in fact create empty arrays, but not really empty, by using object method shown up here. So having said that, the next thing I'm going to introduce to you is something called a mixed type arrays. I'm going to delete this part because I don't need that. I'm going to clear it. And the next item on this lecture series in this tutorial is something called mixed type arrays. So you can create arrays with different elements within it, and they are completely not related to each other, which I haven't mentioned in previously. It's very simple. I can show you how it works. So I can create mix type. So I call it mixed type. You can call it whatever you want. So this is basically a variable, but when I start adding things like Sanuja, I put a comma, 234, doesn't really matter. I'm just putting a bunch of numbers in it. 23 get hash date. So this is still a valid array. So it is, so when this is basically like a variable, but then when you have more than one item or object or element in the variable, it become a array. So this array is a valid array. In fact, I can print that, and I can run only this two part of the code. It'll print out nicely Sanuja 34 and 23, Sanuja 234 23, and then the date, that's today's date and current time, and it has no error messages whatsoever. So you can create arrays with the mixed type elements in PowerShell 7 with no problem at all. There are certain situations this is again very useful, and this is why we have it. So you can create mixed type arrays like this, or you can add to an empty array with many items, many objects or elements with many different types, such as a string, numbers, a specific command, or a commandlet in this case, get date, and it should not spit out an error message. It should just work because the PowerShell 7 is built that way. So that's another thing I just want to introduce to you today. There are some options to add mixed type, and you don't need to worry about like doing anything else. Just add to your array with mixed data as long as you enter it correctly. So for example, if I enter Sanuja like this might see it will create a problem. So you need to make sure the string sign that particular notation, and the number sign that particular notation, and the date signs particular notation. For example, if I put 2 into a string like that, this number 2 is no longer a number value, it's a string value. So you just need to make sure that you enter into arrays properly. Other than that, you can have mixed type arrays. So that's the next one I want to introduce to you. So this is basically a mix type array. Let's clear the screen. The next item I want to introduce to you is the arrays that are specifically defined to be a specific type. This can be handy because you can force an array to be either integers or strings, etc., etc. For example, the array up here with mixed type, you have a string here, you have numbers here, and we have a get date commandlet here. But you can force an array to be a specific type, and it will only take that type of elements into that array, which is basically like some people call it casting, also known as sometimes call it an array type is defined or declared. So those are some of the terms that you may hear. You can declare or cast or define an array to be a specific type in PowerShell by using this object square bracket thing. Like for example, let's say I want something that is string. So I'm going to go string string. So this will result in an array with strings on it. It can't take anything else except strings. So if I go like for example integer, let's say integer 64, and this will result in an array, square bracket, that will be integer 64. This is incorrect. You need to have square bracket in here as well. And late. Okay, here you go. So you need to make sure that you start with a square bracket, enter the type. So this is going to be string. You're going to open and close the square bracket and close the square bracket. So that's how you define it. There are other options as well. For example, XML. And then if I go like that, and this is going to be an array of XML documents. So all of these things are valid form of declaring or denoting that in PowerShell that this kind of arrays only can take strings. This array can only take int64. This one can only take XML. Anything else you try to put it in, it's gonna come back and converting either into these types or might end up with an error message. For example, let's say I want to create an array with int32. So I'm gonna start with a square bracket because we are in a scripting environment. It automatically put the ending square bracket. I'm gonna put int32. I'm going to open and close square bracket again, and then I'm going to call this my numbers. So let's go outside here, $, my numbers. I just created a array called my numbers. It doesn't really matter. It's whatever the number you want, whatever the you want to enter for your array name. This is just array name. So I'm going to put 1. Let's say 2. Why not try null? Null is like a value of 0 and 3.45. So I created an array called int32. Sorry, I created an array called my numbers that has been declared to be integer 32 or int32 right here using this function or object. And now if we print this, it'll make sure that all of these items in here gonna be in 32. So if I go in here and type my numbers, because I'm calling in that particular array, and if I run this piece of code, it typed 1, 2, and then 0. After the 0 is null, just type 3. It did not print or type 3.45. The reason why 3.45 was not in this array, even though here we have 3.45, because we have specifically casted or specifically declared up here it has to be integer 32. Integer 32 does not have decimal point 45s, so what it has done is it basically put it into 3. Like I can put another number here to prove that, like I can put 1.95, and if I run this again this time, and again it's not gonna release the number of it's not gonna say 1, it's not gonna say 1.95. instead of it's gonna be round up and gonna say 2. The reason for that is I have specifically casted this array to be an int32. If I don't have that int32, like it did at the front right here, if I run this thing without that int32, it won't have that 3 and 2. Instead, it's gonna actually print the actual number. So if I remove that int32, and now if I run this to code, it's gonna print 1, 2, 3, the numbers in 195, etc. The reason why, again, you might not, hey Sanuja, actually it printed the same thing, 3 and 2. Why is that? Because by default this is now set to int32. If you put it into like int64 or something else, it'll print accordingly. So basically you can force an array to be a specific type by forcing it to be that specific type. For example, if I want to make this thing a string, yeah, there you go. So now this is cast into a string, and if I run it, it printed 1, 2, nothing, because string of null mean nothing. 0 is a string of 0, but null is nothing, and it printed nothing. And then these also 3.45 and 1.95, and those strings got printed. These are not, the system doesn't look at 3.45 as a number, it looks as a string. Again, like for example, if you do, like the null is nothing, if I put print 0 in here, if I print this again, it's going to print 0 right there. So it's going to print whatever it sees, because it's converting, it is forcing this array to be a string. If I change again to int32, and if I run this again, I'm going to clear this, it will print a different things, 1, 2, 0, 3, 2, 0, because reason for that is everything now looking at here going to be an int32, because we have casted or force this array to be an int32 array. So this is very useful in certain situations. For example, this is a double, and this the doubles, it become rounded to 3 in here because it's int32. That can be used in certain situation in scripts, which I will cover maybe some later time on my YouTube channel. But this is something keep in mind, is very useful, and you can use that on your code when you are working with arrays. So I'm gonna delete this part because we don't need that, and I'm gonna clear the screen again. And the next thing I'm going to introduce to you is combining arrays. So I'm gonna put all of this way up here. So the next thing I'm going to introduce to you here is something called the combining arrays. So how do you combine arrays, right? It's very simple. Let's create 3 arrays and start combining them. So you have, let's say I have 3 arrays. So first array, and I'm going to call this 1, 2, 3, and let's go second array. Oops, sorry, this needs to be a $sign. Second array, and I'm gonna go 4, 5, 6, and let's say I want to combine these 2 arrays. It's very simple. You're gonna create a new array. So I'm gonna call this combo array, which just means just a combination of arrays, and I'm gonna put first array, and I'm gonna put a +sign, and then I'm gonna say second array. Second array. Okay, so what this has done, it took the first array, it took the second array, just combined both of them into one single array called combo array. You don't need to have these spaces again. Like you can have like this, or you can have it like this. It doesn't really matter the spaces here. I just put it this way so it's easy for me to read. So stick to one style of typing your code, so script, so it will be easy for you to read. So I took first array, I took the second array, I combined them together. So if I type combo array here, and if I call it in, and if I print this part of the code, so just print this part of the code, it should print the combination of the first array and the second array. So it saw the first array, it saw the second array, and it combined the 2 arrays, and it printed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So remember, I'm not calling in the first array or second array to be printed on my terminal. I'm calling in to print the combo array. Because of the way that I have combined it, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, I can show you. If I just run this part of the code, whoop, and then if I run that, and see, it's just printed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can take arrays and combine them, and in any order as well. So if you want to put it in a different order, you can put second array layer, and then you can put first array here, and then if I run this now, let me see what first array. Okay, why does it has a red line? First array expression statement PowerShell. Oh no, that's correct. Yeah, it should run. So if I run it, expression in the statement. Oh, I know why. Oops, I made a mistake. I forgot the +sign in here. So nicely the PowerShell give us a nice error message. So now I combine it. Sorry about that. So I combined in the arrays in different order, and if I run it, it'll give you 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, because I'm combining the first array, second array first. So therefore it's combining this one into this one as opposed to this one into that one. So you can combining in either direction, it doesn't really matter. And when you combine arrays, the changes to an array within the combined array must happen before the combination or joining of the array occurs. In other words, the change would not reflect on the combined array, if you just like, if you just put like the first array plus this one, it's not going to happen. Like if I get rid of this, if I do this, for example, it's just that's not going to combine an array. So that's not a valid thing to do. You need to make sure that you have an array equal to, you create a new array like I said before, and then that with combo some other array in it, you can equal it, and then you can give those arrays to be combined. So this is again a useful thing that you can use to do certain things in PowerShell. Again, I'm just introducing a bunch of stuff for you as all of you are beginners to learning PowerShell scripting. So I'm going to delete this one and just leave it like that, so it's easy for you to see what we have covered. I'm going to clear the screen again here, and you can actually combine arrays like this in other ways as well. So for example, if you want to combine the arrays here, you can also say, let's say I'm going to call this merge merged array. I just want to create a new array, and you can put equal sign, and with the @ symbol, remember we can use the open and close brackets like that, parentheses or whatever, and then you can put here $, and again first array, and then you can do $, second array. Basically you're calling in first and second array, and this is still a valid way of combining arrays. And then if I print the merge array, that way if I print all of this, if I run all of this, the code, it'll run and it'll basically merge 1 2 3 4 5 6. So you can either use this method to combine arrays, or you can use this method to combine arrays. At the end of the day, it will do exactly the same thing. So you're allowed to do either use in here. I prefer the second method. Instead of doing this, we are combining all the way here, it's really hard to read. Instead of that method, I just use the second method, this method, because it's easy for me to read. And one of the other advantage of this is it's easy for me to read when I have multiple things going on inside a merge array. For example, I have the first array here, second array here. What if I want to add something else? So let's say I want to add a new item. Let's say I call the item Sanuja, it's a string, and I want to add something else too, because I don't know, I'm feeling great today, so I want to add something else. So let's put get dash process. So I'm adding not only the two arrays up here, but I'm also combining some additional items. So I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to comment this thing out because I'm not this is not actually being used right now. So I'm using this array, and then actually, why don't I move this? Oh no, just leave it. And then in addition to these, in addition to using these two arrays, I'm also combining a string and get process commandlet. And if I run this part of the code, it printed first, it printed the 1 2 3 4 5 6, it printed Sanuja, and it printed the processes, get process commandlet. So in other words, by combining array method, you not only can combine different arrays, but you can also combine anything in your code, variables, strings, commandlets, etc, etc. So you have the ability to combine multiple things using combine array method. So I'm going to delete this part because we don't want to get that information printed every time. So I'm going to clear it. Clear. Okay, there you go. And the next item I'm going to introduce to you is selecting multiple elements from an array or array list, which kind of I should have introduced earlier on, which I did a little bit, but I'm just going to introduce you again. So let's say I have a array. Let's call it multi-item array, right? It's a multi-item array. And let's say that array has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So it has 10 items. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Remember, this is position 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there are 9 positions. 0, 9 is a positions, but we have 10 items in here. Now remember from my previous lecture that if I want to get some item on here, I can go multi-item, and let's say I want position 0. Let's say again I want multi-item, and I want, let's say, position 1. Remember, we learned this already in my previous lesson. If I run this, it's going to print 1 and 2 because it's going to print position 0 and position 2. So it's print 1 and 2. Remember, we also learned that you can count from backward as well. So if I want something backward, let's say -2. Oops, sorry. Let's say it's -2. It'll start in -1 here, not 0, -1. -2 is 9. So if I print right now this part again, if I run it, it'll print 9. See, 9, because counting from backward when you put negative value. We already know that. We already learned that. But what if you want to take multiple items from this array and print it within a range? So let's say I want items from position number 2 all the way to 4. You can do that. So to do that, you put your first position within the same type of square brackets after you call in the array. So you put your array, put the square bracket, you start position, put 2 dots, and you put the end position. And if you type this right now, if you print this right now, it's going to print 3, 4, 5. The reason why it print 3, 4, 5 because 0, 1, 2. So 2 is 3, right? Position number 2 has number 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So 4 is the position number, the fourth position. We have number 5. So so from second position 0, 1, 2, second position. So it printed second position to the fourth position. So 3, 4, 5 got printed. And you can also do this with the other way as well. So if I recall the same one, multi-item, but let's say I want to get it from backward. So I'm going to start with -1 again, 2 dots, -5. And if I print this right now, so I'm going to clear this. I'm going to print that part now. What this does, it printed from -1, that is 10, and then went to -5. So -1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 10 to 6. If it is a little bit harder to see because it's printing both of this, I will comment this thing out. I will show you just that part. So if I run this part, so this is not running right now. So I printed 10, 9, 8, 7, and 6. So I printed from -1 to -5. So that range print. So accessing elements within an array using an array, so using a range method is useful when you have to grab bunch of items from an array in a one go. So this is how you can do it. Obviously you can do loops like for loops and while loops, for example, which I haven't covered yet. But without using the loops, you can use this trick or method in PowerShell 7 to access multiple items within an array. Back in the background of this PowerShell 7, what happening is it's like a loop. It goes into this multi-item array and goes through each element until they find the positions 2 to 4 and then print it, or -1 to -5, for example, and then print it. But without using explicit while loop or for loop, you still can do it using this method. Also remember that arrays and array lists are similar in many ways. So you can perform this exact same operation in ArrayLists as well. So if you want to do that, it's a little bit different if we create an array list. So if I clear it, it's the same thing, it's just a different way of doing it. So if I delete this item, so this is how you do it in arrays. And if you want to do it with the array list, for example, let's create an array list. So go array list 0, and I'm going to go equal new dash object dash type. So the switch going to be type, and then I'm going to go system dot collections dot array list. Oops. So I just created an array list right here. Remember, I already went through in my previous lecture how to create array list. You can go ahead and check that over there. And now we have this array list right here. We can use that array list. So let's add something to. So let's say array. Oh, I spelled this wrong. So array list 0. Spelling doesn't really matter if you spell the same way actually, but I just want to make sure it's correct. And I'm going to go add range. So I'm going to add a range of items in here. Remember, I already introduced you how to do add range. You put add symbol in here, and you can open and close brackets, and I'll call this apple. Oops, comma, candy, comma, I just want some items, mouse, comma, beef. Okay, so I just add bunch of things, and I'm gonna close the brackets, parentheses, and that basically create an array list with bunch of items in here. Array lists are different from arrays. I already explained what they are in the previous lessons, but just know this is an array list now. So this is an array and this is an array list. I'm going to move a little bit up here so it's easy to see. This is all we are concerned about, the array list part, and I want to print something in here, right? So I'm going to again call in the array list. So array list 0. And I'm gonna call in 1.2, and if I print this thing just like arrays, it'll result in printing candy and mouse, because this is position 0, position 1, and position 2. So 0, 1, 2. So it's printed candy and mouse. And you can also print it this in backward, but just like before, if you want to print it from -1 to -2, again you can print that right here, and it'll print beef and mouse, because the beef is -1 and the mouse is -2. So the same principle that went with the arrays are the same principle that we're going to use for array lists when you want to print multiple items contained within them. How about printing or accessing different ranges? So you don't want to access a range of just -1 to -2, but you want to add -1 to -2 and more stuff in here. So you want to add other items. So you want to access more things contained within it. You can do that. I'm going to add a few more items in here just to make sure that we are within the range. So Manuja Geeks. I just put a few more items in here. I'm going to clear the screen, and now I want to access a range. So instead of accessing just a range, I want to access multiple ranges. You can do that. So for example, let's go my array list. You're going to start with the same thing. You're going to call in the array list, not my array list. So I created this array list, so I'm going to go with the same way, $ array list. And now I'm going to start with the square bracket, and I'm going to put an @ symbol in there. And in here, I'm going to say 0. And put +, and let's say I want to access from 3.5 and plus -1. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's going to also print this net IT geeks as well. So I will print it and I will explain to you what it is again, because it's going to be a little bit hard for you to just look at it and look what's happening here. So I printed right down. So what happened here is basically we have an array list with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 7 items in this array list. So it has 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are 6 positions, 0 to 6 positions and 7 items. How you read this is basically you start with the array list and it call in the position number 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3, which is B, which is beef. And then printed from beef to whatever we see at the position number 5. It printed apple 5 because I also call it in apple position right here, and that's why it printed the apple as well. So it first came in and look at the 0 position, printed the apple, and look at the 3rd position, then start printing from 3rd position, which is beef, Sanuja, Manuja, and then the net IT geeks got printed because we are also calling in the negative position, calling from the backward. Another way I can also ask for a range. For example, I can do the same thing or similar thing by doing something like this: 0 dot dot 0, and then I'm plus. Then I can go 4 dot dot. Let's say sorry, let's do the same 3 dot dot 5, and then plus -1, and that is still a valid one. Again, it's doing the similar thing. If I print it, it printed the apple and printed beef, Sanuja, Manuja, net IT geeks. It's doing the same thing as the previous one. Actually, let's copy this, so and then go. So this one is same as this one. Oh, it didn't work. Okay, let me retype it. So this one and array list 0, and if I go 0 dot dot 0 and plus 3 dot dot 5 plus -1. So these two are basically doing the same thing. In fact, if I clear the screen here and if I print this part, you will see it printed apple, beef, Sanuja, Manuja, net IT geeks. That's this part. And then print apple, beef, Sanuja, Manuja, net IT geek. That's this part. So both of these things are doing the same thing again and again. And these are like a couple of ways that you can access multiple items contained within an array list. So I'm going to clear the screen here again. Next thing we will look at is how we can access elements within an array using another method. To do this, I'm just going to use this multi-item array up here. I'm just going to cut this thing out and I'm going to paste it down below here, because I don't need to run all of this high up here. And I'm going to move our code a little bit like that, so we only see that part. So on line number 27 of my script, I have this thing called multi-item. It's an array with multiple items contained within it, and I'm going to show you how you can access certain items with some few more operations. Not very complex, but it looks like a little bit complex. So this is a method that people can use then when we are using like certain mathematical operations, for example. So I'm going to add a few more elements in here. So I'm going to say 10, 15, 16, 25, 30, 35, 55, let's say 18. It doesn't really matter. I'm just put a bunch of numbers in here. Now the method that I'm going to introduce you is something called greater than or less than. So these are mathematical operations, which I will go over more in a future tutorial as well. but I just want you to show you that from an array like this, you can access elements or information contained within them, using a mathematical greater than or less than value. So I'm gonna actually mess this thing up as well. So I'm gonna say, instead of putting 4 here, I'm gonna put here 43, and I'm gonna put 4 way back here. So it's all messed up. So it's not in a particular order. Let's put this one as 11 and this one as 1. So now, so let's put 1 here. So make it more interesting. So basically, it's not in a particular order except this first part, like 2, 3, and then 6, 7 right here. It's all mixed up here. So if I print this array right now, it's not going to print in any particular order other than starting from position 0 and going all the way to whatever the position we have at the end. So if I print this multi-item, if I print, just run that code, it's just going to print 11, 2, 3, 43, etc, etc. So it's not in a particular order. Now imagine you have an array like this, but you need to access certain elements with a certain value, either greater than or less than. You can do that. To do that, what we will do is we're gonna type in my multi-items array. So that's the name we have for the array, and we're gonna put a switch called GT. GT stands for greater than, and let's say I want to print anything greater than the value of 15. So what this is going to do, it's going to go ahead and check any value contained within this array that is greater than 15, and it's going to print on my screen. So if I run this right now, even though this array is mixed up, so there are values that maybe greater than 15 contained in the front of it or in back of it, it doesn't really matter. For example, 43 is greater than 15, but it is at the very front of the array, but 35, for example, is greater than 15. It is in the other side of that number 15, this position. It doesn't matter where the elements falls into in this multi-item array. Is still going to print anything greater than 15. So it go through the entire array, find anything greater than 15 and start printing. So for example, 43, 16, 25, 30, 35, 55, 18. So anything greater than. It's not greater than or equal to, it's just greater than 15. The same thing can be said about anything less than. For example, if I want to print something less than, you can put in here, instead of GT, you can put LT, that stands for less than. And in our scripting environment, it actually pop up right here saying LT is less than. I'm going to put it like that. And in here, we can say, okay, I want anything that is less than, let's say, 6. So it's going to print any items that is less than 6. So I'm going to clear the screen here. And if I run only these 2 lines of code, it's printed 2, 3, 5, 1, 4. Why? Because 6 is here, and it starts from the beginning, position number 0, and position number 1 has 2, position number 2 has 3, and it has 5 here, and nothing else here that is less than 6. And then you go through the rest of this and find anything less than 6 and start printing all those items. So by using either GT or using the other one, LT, less than, you can print items so contain within an array that is less than a certain value right here or greater than a certain value. This is very useful in PowerShell scripting when you want to access multiple items, numeric items, that is a part of an array, and that you need to access a specified value. In other words, like let's say you have a numeric element array and you want to access a certain specified item, you can express that this way. You can also actually put this into a one single line as well. So let's say you have a multi-item array and you want to put greater than 3, and you want to have less than less than 7. What this is going to do, it's going to go ahead and again perform this operation and this operation. I'm going to clear this actually. Let's clear the screen. It's going to perform this operation and it's going to go ahead and perform this operation. So it's going to find anything greater than 3, but anything less than 7, and it's going to start printing that information. So if I run this, for example, it prints 5, 6, 4. 5 is greater than 3, less than 7. 6 is greater than 3, less than 7. 4 is greater than 3, less than 7. So it went through this entire number of elements contained within this array, but only printed the item that is greater than 3 and less than 7. Again, that allow you to access elements contained within an array with a specified numeric condition, which is using the greater than and less than conditions. Keep in mind also, if I start typing GT, remember, it is a switch. We know it's a switch because we start with a dash. So LT is the less than, GT is the greater than. EQ mean equal to. That's another operation you can perform. So you can pick something in here. Let's say it has to be exactly equal to 15. I know value 15 is here because it's already in here up there. But let's say you don't know whether it's equal or not. So if you run this, it's going to print the value that is equal to 15. This is going to be 15. So that's why it's probably not going to be used a lot in your code, because if you already know the 15 is there, why do you want to find a 15 there, right? But EQ is another switch you can use. But less than and greater than, for example, are very commonly used items when you have an array with multiple items contained within it. You can also use a few more complex filtering other than putting both of them together. Let's like saying greater than 3 and less than less than LT less than 7. Other than doing a expression which is kind of complex here, because we are putting two boundaries, upper boundary and a lower boundary, you can also create complex, a little bit of more complex way of expressing this using where object method. So how you can do that is you can also type in like something like multi-item. In this case, that's the array name, and I'm going to put a pipe. So pipe is this symbol. Oops. Oh, sorry, but that pipe is that symbol. I will explain how pipes work in my future videos, maybe in depth. For now, just know that is a pipe, and I'm going to use the where object pipe, and I'm going to open up a curly bracket, and it's automatically going to close the bracket because I'm in an integrated scripting environment. So it's your array name pipe where object open curly brackets, and we're going to put $_ space dash GT, the greater than, and I want to have greater than 3, and I'm going to put a dash and, that is a again mathematical expression or mathematical switch, and I put a $_ space dash LT, that is less than 7, and this is still a valid expression, and it will print the same thing as what we have done here with the multi-item, this line that we had before. And if I run this, for example, it will print the same thing but using where object method. So if I print this, for example, it will print 5, 6, 4. So this method and this method, which I have done before, is going to print the same thing. So this is doing the same thing as this, except it is using the where object method. So if I clear this screen, if I print it right now, so I just copy the multi-item, the other option I print it, it's going to be 564 564 because it's print of 564 right here and then 564 right here. So that's another way of that you can use a complex expression or complex scripting method to actually achieve the same result. There are reasons why you do this. I will explain that maybe sometimes later. For now, just know that there are other ways of accessing the same information. Another way of doing this is actually another complex method. That is, if I go with, let's go just underneath it. So if I type multi-item again in here, and if I put dot where, and now you see it is a method or object that we can use the where, right? And then again we can open and close the curly bracket. Again we can go $_ space dash GT. I'm gonna put 3 in here, and again a switch, that dash means switch basically, and then gonna go underscore, and then got dash LT, that is less than, and I'm gonna go 7. All of these 3 gonna do the same thing. So if I just run this code and not not these 2 codes, it's gonna print the same information. So if I actually put a comment in here, so that I'm not gonna print those previous items, and if I print this, notice it's gonna print the same thing, 5 6 4. Again I can clear this screen and I can print all 3 of these items, and if I run it, it's gonna print 5 6 4, that's this part, 5 6 4, that's this part, 5 6 4, that's this part. So all of these 3 way of getting elements out of your array containing multiple elements can be used to achieve the same result. So all of these are valid way of accessing greater than or less than numeric information from your array. So that is an important thing that you should also learn. The next thing I'm going to teach you would be something related to arrays again, but that would be how we can change elements when you have a whole bunch of elements in here without deleting it, just basically replacing an element. So what I'm going to do, first I will clear the screen, and the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this again, this multi-item array. Let's name this something else. Instead of calling multi-item array, let's call this replace array or something, replace item. So I created a new array called replace item. It's the same array, I just rename it here. Let's say REPL item. That's pretty good enough. I just want to create another array with bunch of numbers or values in it. So I'm going to move this a little bit higher up because I'm not going to look at this information anymore. I'm going to go a little bit below because this is the code that I'm interested in right now. Now, what I would like to do now is to replace an item contained within here. So for example, I want to replace, let's say, this item. I don't like 43 in here, but I don't want to delete the 43. I want to replace 43 with a different value, right? I want this to be, let's say, 99 or something like that, 100, something like that. So how would I do that? Well, to do that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to start again with the $, and I'm going to call in my array. But I'm going to start with the square bracket, and I'm going to say, so 0, 1, 2, 3. So that's the third position. And I want that to be replaced by 99. And now if I print this item, this array, it is going to be missing that 0, 1, 2, 3, missing 43, and it's going to print 99 instead. So let's print this one. It printed 11, it printed 2, it printed 3, but it is missing 33, but it didn't actually just get rid of the 43. Instead, it replaced the position 3 that contain element 43 with 99. So that's how you can get an array to replace an element, and if you want to change an element contained within an array, this is a useful thing. Again, to show you that it is actually replacing, if I can reprint, I can print the item up here, and let's put this at to 2929567. So it's a big number, it's easy to see. So I'm gonna clear the screen. So when the first run goes through, it's gonna create this array with all these numbers. It's gonna print exactly what you see on this script line right here on line number 33. Next time it's gonna print, it has replaced the position 0, 1, 2, 3. Let's replace position number 5. Who cares, right? Oops. Position number 5. Let's do something different position. So it's gonna 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's gonna replace this one, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So number 6 should be missing, because we are replacing the 5th position. So if I run this, so when the first time it ran 11, 12, 3, 4, 43, 5, 6, etc. So it's actually printing what you see on up here. When it's run the second time, it started with 11, but now the position number 5, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is the number 6, is replaced by that big number that I entered, 29,156. So that's how you basically replace it. So when the script first runs, it has a specific values on each of these positions, and these elements are set at the beginning, but then it gets replaced when you start replacing using the replace method. So if you want to change, multiple items at the same time, you will most likely be using a loop to do this. So if you want to actually replace, let's say, the position number 5, position number 7, position number 8, position number 1, etc., etc., you will be most likely using a loop to do it instead of doing anything, something similar to this. Since we don't yet have covered the loops in PowerShell 7, I will leave that out for now. But in the future, keep that in your mind, back of your mind, that you can use loops to remove elements from an array. Replace or remove, even replace or remove elements from an array. Now, next thing I want to also introduce, since I may mention a little bit, is that the removing elements from an array. So it is possible to remove elements by setting a null value. So it's a specific way of removing elements from an array, and it is a useful way that you can remove an array element without actually deleting that position completely. For example, I have an array up here, and I want to, let's say, set position number 1 to a null value. Null value means there's nothing in there. So I'm not completely deleting that position, I'm setting it to null. So that means 0, 1 going to be nothing. So if I print this, that's going to happen? It printed 11, 2, 3, 43. So 11, 2, 3, 43. So again here 11, 3, now the position is gone. So 0, 1, so the 2 is gone. So 11 is there, but the 2 is gone. What I have done here is setting a position to, instead of a 0, but just getting rid of it. Actually, I misspoke a little few seconds ago. So basically I'm getting rid of that position by setting it to null value. So you can actually, it is possible to remove an element by setting it to a null value. So for example, I don't like this big number, let's say 43. So you're going to 0, 1, 2, 3. That's a third position. And if I run that now, so if I clear it, and let's not run the first part, we know it's already been created here. Okay, that's the incorrect code. Yeah, okay, I commented that part out. So if I run this, you will notice it's 11, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's not printing the 43 because 43 is set to null and it is gone. Again, that's another way of you can modify an array to have a a certain value that you would like to have. However, the thing about this is that it's not really actually completely deleting that position. How do I know this? If I put .count here, and then if I run this, I'm going to clear this. And if I run this part of the code, it'll say there are 19 items in here. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So we started out with 19 items. We set an item to null, but we still have 19 items. In fact, I can prove that if I reprint this. So I'm printing count up here and I'm printing count up here. Let's see if it matches. So before we remove the element or put it into a null value, I actually print the count here and I also count it afterwards. So if I print it again, it print 19 at this position of the script, and on the line number 38 of the script, again it print 19. That means even though we have removed an element from this array, it's not really actually removing the element. It's just setting the elements to null value. So I kind of misspoken, spoken correctly here, because what happened here is basically if you're printing this entire list of items here, this element, and if you set something to null, basically you can think of as removing that element. However, it's not, didn't actually remove the position of that element, because if you count it, you still has a 19 position arrays, an array with 19 positions. So advantage of this, let's say you have an array with multiple things, and you are nulling certain items. So I want to get rid of certain items, but you don't want to make your array really small. You need to keep the array in a certain length or count. So if you print this now, it's still gonna print 1919 even though I have removed whole bunch of stuff in here, right? So again, that is a useful function when you want to remove item from an array, but you don't want to shrink your array. So you want to keep the memory that is allocated for this array as it is, but still remove elements. This is how you do it using the null method, null technique, not method actually, because method actually have a real meaning in PowerShell. So you can use that null technique. So when the array was created, there are 19 elements. You remove bunch of elements by nulling it, but nulling them, but you still have 19 elements allocated to this this particular array. Again, when you are using loops, when I'm introduced you to loops, this is going to be very useful because that's good for your system's memory, especially if you have hundreds of thousands of employees or users actually using your script. This can reduce the memory usage of your server if you are not destroying your array and keeping the positions as it is. So that's why nulling can be a useful thing for you to use. Now we discuss the null. The other thing I'm going to introduce you is the clearing the array. So this is how you null it. So I'm just going to leave it there. So let's say I want to clear an array, right? So I don't want the null anything. I just want to clear the entire array. You can do that with again calling in a clear function or method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip item, and I'm going to put dot, and I'm going to clear. And using this technique, you can clear your array. So if I reprint this right here, the array is created up here, and you don't need to do the null part anymore. So I'm just gonna, it's only gonna print this part and these two items, and then if I print it, the entire array is gone. Now if I put dot count in here. And if I run this now, notice it still has 19 items. So it has 19 positions in this array, but however, there's nothing in that array. The array is gone. So if I print the item, and if I clear it, my screen, clear the screen and clear the array. So it started 19 position, it goes through, it clear every single position, but still hold the array at 19. And when you count it, it's still going to print 19 and there's nothing else to print. So if I print it, it shows 19 items, but there's nothing in it. So there's 19 elements contained within that array, but all of the elements are nullified. So you can nullify the entire element using the clear command right here, clear method, I mean. And that is another way of doing things with arrays. I'm going to clear the screen here, and the next thing I'm going to introduce to you here is something called basically creating an array with multiple variables. There are reasons like a multiple calling variables or something like that. For example, if I go like I and then comma, then I'll put j equal 1, 2. What this is going to do, it's going to create an array with I and j with 1 and 2 in it. Like for example, if I print I here and if I print j here, oops, if I print j here, and if I run these two pieces of code, I'm going to move this thing up a little bit, yeah, because on line number 40. So I'm going to just print these two pieces of code. It printed 1 and 2. So that because of I is associated with this value and the j is associated with this value. And when you're writing code, this is very useful, especially if you have a code that require like multiple sections of strings or numbers that needs to be inputted or added at the same time, but you get it into the code or used by the code at the same time. But to make it more efficient, your code it can be entered in this particular method. And I can give a really good example of this. Let's say you have a variables that are assigning names, right? So I can put first name, and then I'm gonna say this one last name, and let's say this one as Sanuja, so it's a string. Then this one I'm gonna say Senanayake, so that's my name, Sanuja Senanayake. So the first name is Sanuja, second name is Senanayake, and it is in first name and last name variable arrays, right? So now, variable, it's basically holding a one value. Now let's say I want to get my last name, so I can go last name, and if I print this, I'm going to clear the screen, it's going to print Senanayake. It's not going to print Sanuja, so it prints Senanayake. So the last name here is Senanayake and it prints Senanayake. So that's why this is very useful when you want to have that that kind of a method to getting variables with multiple values in it. So for example, I want first name, I can go first name because first name is associated with its first element, and if I print it, it's gonna print as such. Now you may have a question, now what would happen if you have more than the items that can contain, like for example this one have first name, last name, but I have only 2 elements. What happen if I put another one? I put net IT geeks. So now I have first name, last name, and net IT geeks, but I only have 2 defined variables at the front, or the arrays at the front, right? I'll put another one, let's say Manuja. So I have Sanuja, Senanayake, net IT geek, Manuja, but I only have first name and last name. So what would happen here is that when I print first name, it's gonna print Sanuja. But if I print last name, you will notice that it's not going to print just Senanayake, it's going to print Senanayake, NetIT Geek, and Manuja. In other words, if you create an array that is longer than the number of variables available on here at the very beginning, what happens is the variables that once get used up, for example, first name, it's used up with this one and it's done. And this last name, it's going to go ahead and apply everything afterward into that particular variable. I can show you this in another way. Let's say I create an array called let's say something else, P and M. So I have an array called variables called P and M variables. And I'm going to put bunch of numbers, 1, 5, then let's say this is 12, 15, 13, 14, etc. right? And 22, it doesn't really matter. So now I have this array with, but only like I only have like 2 variables contained within them. So this is going to be basically a variable with 1 element, with that's going to be 1. But the M gonna contain everything after that. For example, if I print P, I clear the screen here, and if I print P here, it's gonna print 1. But if I print M here, it's gonna print everything except 1. So I'm gonna clear this. It printed 12, 15, 13, 14, 22. So it printed everything except 1, because 1 is associated with this one first variable. So if you have more than 1 element within your variables that you have defined at the very beginning, so the first one going to be just a variable with that whatever the variable name and the very first element, but the second one going to be an array containing all the other elements contained within them, because arrays are basically like variables containing multiple elements. So it is kind of a neat way of error handling that is baked into PowerShell 7 that you can use. So you can do that with these things. I mean, you can create another one called J in here. And now if I print M, for example, so I'm going to clear the screen here. So I'm going to print M in here. Obviously, it's only going to print 12 because the first element goes into the first one, second one goes into the second one, and the third one is going to print the rest. So if I print J here, now what's going to happen? The first 2 elements not going to get printed, but it's going to print rest of it. So its first 2 elements are taken up by the variable P and M. And then the next element and onwards going to be associated with the J, which is going to be an array containing 15, 13, 14, 22. So that's what happens if you are creating an array with multiple variables, but it has it has more than 1 value contained within them. So I'm going to clear the screen again here because we are done with this lecture as well. Edit, undo, and I'm going to clear the screen right here. And the next one I'm going to introduce to you is something called the multi-dimensional or jagged arrays. So I'm going to go into the next line here. So let's move the screen a little bit higher up. So because we are starting from line number 45, let's say, and I'm going to introduce you to this concept called multi-dimensional or jagged arrays. Again, this is just introduction to arrays type of lecture here, with a little bit of extension into some methods and techniques that we have in built into PowerShell. So let's say I build an array. So I'm going to call this array. Oh, I'm typing in the wrong place. I'm going to type it up here. So I'm going to call this the array of arrays. Very what do you call, very creative. And I'm going to add symbol, and I'm going to start with, remember, open and close brackets like that. And I'm going to say at, and I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go another at, and I'm going to go 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to do another at, and I'm going to put 7, 8, 9. What I have created here is something called a multi-dimensional array. So multi-dimensional array can be described as a given that an array contains objects. An array therefore also contain other arrays is a way of explaining it. So like if somebody asks you what is a multidimensional array in PowerShell, in Windows PowerShell 7, multidimensional arrays contain arrays within them. So this is an array, this is a valid array that we have created, but in this, within this valid array, we have multiple arrays contained within them. This is another array, contain this in this array, this is another array, this is another array. So 1, 2, 3 is in a one array, but 4, 5, 6 is another array, and the 7, 8, 9 is another array, but they all contain within in this multi-dimensional array. So you need to be careful when you are using this kind of arrays. Some people call it a nested array because that you need to have a certain way of accessing that information. For example, let's say I want to access number 2, right? I want to access number 2. I don't care what array it is in there. I just want to access number 2. To do that, I need to go, let's call in my multidimensional array. So array of arrays. Then I need to start with square bracket 0 and then square bracket 1. Why? Because when this code is run, I want to get this element number 2. I need element 2 out, right? So it's going to go into this array and it's going to look at position 0, 1, 2. So 0 position contain this array, but within the 0 position, I want to access element number 0, 1. So that's how you can access a multi-dimensional array. These are very useful again for certain type of scripting. I just want you to know this exists for now. And we will do more with this with our intermediate and advanced PowerShell scripting lessons that I might be posting in the future on my YouTube channel. So like, for example, I want to access like say 9. No, let's say 6. I want to access this element 6. Something in the middle of all my multi-dimensional array. So this is a 0 position of these arrays. This is the second position, that's going to be 1. So I'm on the 1. So 0, 1. But again, we're going to start counting again from 0 here. 1, 2. So I want to access the position number 2. So I'm accessing in this multi-dimensional array, I'm accessing array number 2, which is at the position number 1. And I'm going to access the element number 3, which is in the position number 2. And if I run this, it should print 6. See, it printed 6. So this is called a multi-dimensional array that allow us to access many items contained within that array that can have multiple things. Jagged arrays are specific form of multi-dimensional arrays that contain different lengths of elements. So this is called a multi-dimensional array, but in PowerShell scripting, if I put more numbers in here, let's say I added more numbers in here. Let's say this is, I'm going to add 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Now this became basically a jagged array. In the first example, basically, all of the arrays contain exactly same number of elements, but now this one contain different number of elements. Like I can put in here another number, let's say 25. So it's not the actual number, it's the number of elements contained within it. So this is a jagged array. So for example, in the array number 1, position number 1, so 0, 1, I can access element number 5 because 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 has a value. If I type print this, it should print 12. See, it printed 12. I'm going to clear the screen, it's really hard to see. Print it again, and it printed number 12 because it does have number 12. But if I use position number 0 array right here and try to print the same value, it's not going to print anything because there's nothing contained within there, right? If I print this, there's nothing in it because it doesn't have position number 5. The maximum it goes to is position number 0, 1, 2, right? And that will print 3. It printed 3 right here. But on this next array, I do have position number 5. And if I print that, it will spit out whatever on the position number 5, which is 12. So this is what we call a jagged array because it contains elements that are not in the same, not every array contained within them is not the same length. So again, these are very useful. So the multidimensional arrays use the PowerShell, built-in features to access elements contained within each of these arrays, and it allows scripters like you and me to do more things with Windows PowerShell. That's everything for today. I know this has been a long lesson, but this introduced you to many items that you can do with arrays and array list in Windows PowerShell. If you like these type of lectures and lessons on PowerShell, please make sure to thumbs up this video and subscribe to my channel. I have already posted many other different topics and items such as CCNA lectures on my YouTube channel, so you're more than welcome to go ahead and watch them. Until next time, thank you so much and have a nice day.